Start recording. Yes. Hi. 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 And welcome to my kitchen. My lazy kitchen. If you're like me, you suddenly have this urge to bake at like 11 o'clock in the evening, and obviously your fridge is empty, you have no eggs, you have no milk, you have literally nothing because you have nothing ever in your cupboard. But that's alright, because we're going to bake a vegan and gluten-free chocolate cake. So now if you're looking at a video where you will quickly learn about how to bake this cake, this is probably not your video. This video is more about me messing around in the kitchen while filming a video, because I was practicing my drag and suddenly I thought, oh well, I want to bake a cake because, well, you know, it's 11 in the evening and, well, I had this urge to eat some cake. But if you just want to do the recipe, then I will just link it below and you can just do that instead. I did actually steal this recipe from the internet, and I am basically explaining what a few ingredients are that you might think, oh, why do I need to put sodium bicarbonate or even white vinegar? But they're actually the two main ingredients in this recipe which allow them to be vegan and gluten-free. This recipe is very simple. You only need a bowl or something to mix your ingredients in, a kind of whisk, and I don't have my whisk. It's probably yes. I'm not going to wash that. But I was going to say anyway that if you're a poor student like I once was and do not whisk, you can do it with a fork or a knife. So let's try. I will do it to pour like this. Okay, and the other thing that we need is some recipient to cook it in, and obviously an oven. If you don't have an oven, it's very difficult to bake anything. Now, let's see what we'll need. For this recipe, we will need 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. So you can do this with any type of flour. I actually did both with wheat flour and with, I'm using today rice flour, and I find that actually the rice flour of this cake is much nicer. So if you're gluten intolerant or celiac, this is a very good alternative. 1 cup of white sugar, 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, important, 1/3 cup of vegetable oil, not olive oil, something with a bit less flavor, so sunflower oil or corn oil or anything that basically doesn't make you scream when you're eating your cake. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, that's optional. If you don't have it, it's fine. But important is 1 teaspoon of distilled white vinegar, any type of, and I'll come back to that, any type of acid, so you could replace it potentially with a lemon if you have that, lemon juice, but white vinegar is better in that sense. 1 cup of water and 1 teaspoon of baking soda or sodium bicarbonate. And I will start by saying that sodium bicarbonate and baking soda is different from baking powder. This is baking powder and it will not work. Baking powder is basically a mix of sodium bicarbonate, sodium or baking soda with other stuff, so we don't want that. So baking powder, just save your time. If you only have that, save your time. I've tried it, it does not work, it does not raise, it's a break. Now, baking soda or sodium bicarbonate is something that you will find in the kitchen ale, but it is also something that you will find in the cleaning ale, and you might actually have this in your cupboard for cleaning. I actually use this one, this specific one, for cleaning my kitchen and for cleaning my bathroom. Now, disclaimer, I do highly recommend that you buy the actual kitchen grade baking soda, but some of you might be horrified to learn that I'm going to use for my cooking the same thing that I use for cleaning. But it is actually the same molecule, so it's basically the same thing that you're using to clean and to bake. The only difference, and that is very important, is that it's not processed the same way. While this type of sodium bicarbonate has been processed with a lot of different ingredients and a lot of other chemicals that might actually be dangerous for your health, kitchen grade or food grade sodium bicarbonate will have reduced, they will have some health and safety type of measures that ensure that you only get sodium bicarbonate inside the box. Now, it is a risk I take. I would not recommend it, but if it's the only thing and you don't really care, like me, and I've baked this cake several times and not dead, and you're baking it for yourself, then that's what I'm using. But just a word of warning, I'm not recommending this. A few tips and tricks. First of all, you will see in this recipe that you have different types of ingredients. You have what we call dry ingredients, which is all of your sugar, your flour, baking soda, and this is your base of dry elements, basically anything that is powdery. So whenever you're baking, I would also always recommend to mix all of your dry ingredients together, like that you get this unified and nice mixture, because if you start adding the wet ingredients, which is your water, your oil, then you will have this problem that it won't be unified and it won't be well mixed. The second reason why we start with the dry ingredient is because dry ingredients actually slide away from your measuring cups, whereas the wet ingredients, they stick, and then if you put the dry ingredients in, then you have to clean it and it's a mess. If you're like me and you need to have everything cooked in less than 5-10 minutes, which will probably, this video will probably be much longer than if I was just doing it on my own, but you know, this is another problem. Urge to bake. Now, I know I'm this kind of person who loves changing recipes. I hate following recipes, but actually the reason why you might be tempted to follow exactly this recipe is because we're not using any gluten and we're not using any eggs or anything that will make it easier to put everything together. You might want to follow the instructions. So, and if 1 cup of sugar does seem a lot for some people, it is, you can experiment. Like to add just a pinch more. It's psychology. And some salt. I'll be right back. I'm not entirely sure why we put salt in this recipe, because usually the salt is used with alongside yeast to so you get sugar and yeast, the yeast eats the sugar and starts bubbling and making a reaction, and the salt is there to prevent it from going too crazy. In this recipe, since we're not using yeast, I'm not entirely sure why, but I will just put the salt just in case. Maybe it is linked to the baking soda and the vinegar. Now take your fork or your whisk if you're lucky, and then just make sure that everything is well blended. I basically want this brownish, disgusting color. And we have our dry ingredients. I like to put a small well in the middle so that my wet ingredients go always there. And there's a plane. Here in Luxembourg we have many planes. And it's past midnight. And yes, planes. Ah, I love them. Where was I forgot one important thing that I always forget, and I was thinking I will remember to tell people to not make this mistake, which is to preheat your oven. So let's do that right now because I am sure that you've forgotten as well. So we're preheating at 175 degrees. No idea what that in Celsius, no idea what that is in Fahrenheit. And then we preheat. So it's now going to make a lot of noise and you're happy. The water here is kind of brownish, so we drink water, bottled water. Some vanilla extract if you have some. It enhances the chocolate taste, which is always good. As you can see, I do not follow the 1 teaspoon recommendation. I just go with what I feel. And so now we can start mixing. From the center, you want to, so obviously if you have a whisk, it will be easier to blend your ingredients, but a fork is good enough. For a tin, put a bit of oil, not much, just enough to basically with your fingers rub all the borders of the can, and that will help in making sure that it doesn't attach too much. I don't put parchment, because I don't care about this kind of things. I just eat it straight out from the to add it in the tray, and we put it in the oven. And it bakes for, I have no idea, 45 minutes. Okay. My eyes look awful. How long do I have to wait now? So the thing I wanted to mention is the baking soda or sodium bicarbonate and the white vinegar. So basically what you want in a cake, the idea is that you have this liquidy or texture that needs to rise, and while it's cooking you want air bubbles to get trapped inside it and rise and rise and rise and rise and cook it like that. That's what happens basically with a cake. It rises, it cooks like that, and it gets fixed. So when you use a traditional whatever, wheat flour and raising agents and eggs are the ones that solidify everything and makes it more fluffy. Without using this, you need other techniques, and one of the techniques is a chemical reaction that happens when you mix a base, which is, you know, a very high pH, with an acid like lemon or white vinegar. Basically, your baking powder, your baking soda, your sodium bicarbonate is a base, very high pH. So when you mix the two together, it actually creates this reaction where it releases oxygen, and by releasing oxygen when your dry elements has sodium bicarbonate, and then your acids that you've put in wet elements, when they combine, they start making this reaction. So if you were to wait long enough, you would actually start seeing bubbles there, which is what we want. We want gradual temperature, this rising and the reaction creating this oxygen and fixing it like that. That's why if you try this recipe without those two key elements, it will just fail. You need sodium. There are not only two things that you might want to buy specifically for your kitchen for any eventual elements are those two key elements is an acid, so white vinegar, it's super cheap and you never use it anyway, and this sodium bicarbonate or baking soda that you can keep, and you can keep it for years, so it's fine. Bear that in mind, especially if you're looking into vegan stuff or gluten-free stuff, which are much harder to raise. So those two key elements are a very good base for a lot of your cooking. So the one thing that we want to make sure of is that you want to be, once you've mixed, you actually want to put it in the tin quite quickly and then into the oven. But basically don't leave it for like an hour and do something else and watch a YouTube video of someone else, because then your reaction that you have by mixing the vinegar and the baking soda is already starting. So if you wait too long, then the whole point of mixing those two ingredients will be gone. Okay, so we're nearly at the 45 minutes mark, and I think it's time to test a cake with a knife or a wooden big thing, whatever. And it's clean, meaning that it's done. And there you have it. And you see it raised. And basically you just leave it to cool down. I know it's tempting to eat it now, but no, it's too hot. Leave it cooling down and then just eat it. Comment if you do this recipe. Let me know what you thought, if it was a catastrophe or if it worked quite well. I'm going to remove my makeup and go to bed. Good night.